We're back with Pro Video Coalition's NAB 2024 coverage, and I'm here with Matt Bach from Puget Systems. Puget Systems, what am I saying? Sorry.
Yeah, we're located near the Puget Sound.
Yeah,
it's
no
Puget
kidding.
Systems.
So give me a little bit of background on Puget Systems and what you guys do.
Sure. So we are a workstation manufacturer, and we specialize in a wide range of things. Obviously, here at NAB, we're focusing on post-production, video editing, VFX, motion graphics. This year also, too, we've been doing a lot more around virtual production. AI is kind of one of the big buzzwords right now. So a lot of that kind of stuff, too. We're working with people who are experimenting with how to use AI, not just for post, but for pre-production and during production and delivery. And so we're kind of looking at all of those ranges and just what are people doing and how can we provide the hardware tools to let them do what it is they want to do.
Awesome. So, dumb question, but someone out there might say, I can go to HP or Dell or Lenovo, buy a high-end workstation, or I can go the cheap route and go get a gamer rig with a Threadripper and an RTX 4090. Why would I go to Puget and get a custom system?
Well, and I even add into that, what about Apple too? Apple's a big one here in the creative industry, especially when you're talking about the PC side. The big thing with us is we aren't a giant company. We're small enough that we are not required to carry any one kind of hardware. We're not limited to an Intel CPU or an AMD CPU. And so we are a lot more nimble in being able to carry and offer to our customers exactly what the right thing is, not just whatever we're getting a kickback to carry. So that's part of it. We can make sure that what we're providing is the right thing, not just the most expensive thing. The other thing that we do a little bit different is we do a lot of testing before we even offer a system to customers of, again, what is that right tool? And we're not just relying on marketing things from Intel or NVIDIA or anybody, even Adobe or Blackmagic. We're doing our own in-house testing to find out how does this new hardware that just came out actually work in Premiere Pro, After Effects, DaVinci Resolve. And so that, again, it's about the right thing. The last thing really is that we do a lot of internal training so that if you have a support issue and you call up our support department, you don't have to just go through a script that we're providing. We kind of know what you're doing. We understand what Premiere Pro is. We understand the, maybe some recent bugs that are in Photoshop. And we understand what it is you're doing. Our support techs know what raw footage is. They know what chroma subsampling is, bit depth. They know what dynamic link is, so that you're not having to try to talk in hardware language. You talk in your own language. Tell us what the issue is without trying to dumb it down for us hardware nerds. We can actually just tell us you're having this problem in Premiere Pro when you're doing dynamic link to After Effects. Cool, let's solve that way.
That's cool. And you guys actually build custom laptops, right?
Yeah.
Which is quite unusual.
Yeah, it's something we're just getting back into, is laptops. So we announced them in February, and we are just starting to ship them now. And we're starting off with just one base unit because as a smaller company, we are a little bit more limited in what we can do on the hardware level, because when you're building a PC workstation, a tower or desktop, we can pick what motherboard we want to use. We can pick what video card, and you put it all together. With a laptop, a lot more of that stuff is soldered down, so you have to go further up the manufacturing, and we have to get involved earlier. And so we're at the size now where we can get involved earlier. We can get involved with the manufacturing that's being done overseas, and we can control it. That was the big thing for us when we previously used laptops, was the touchpad would just randomly change, or the screen would randomly change. And that's not really great, especially if you're trying to offer warranty support because someone dropped the laptop and the screen just cracked or something like that, and we got to replace it. So yeah, laptops are a big thing that we're getting into right now. We're also doing a lot more shipments into Canada. Canada is another area. We've been predominantly US focused for pretty much the life of our company, and we're getting into Canada now, and hopefully in the future we'll be able to expand over into the UK and some of those areas as well.
Cool. Now, you are the lab supervisor, right? And so you are actually a nerd.
Oh, yes. I like Excel spreadsheets and charts and benchmarks and programming.
So I want to ask you some nerdy questions. So
Absolutely.
let's start with editing. video editing. Here in 2024, what do we care about? What should a good system have? Like, is it about cores? Is it about GPU cores? Is it about memory? Like, what are the sweet spots?
Oh, the problem is video editing is a little too broad because we have like Premiere Pro that is very focused on processor, and you want a fast CPU, not necessarily one with a ton of cores. So,
but I've heard that Premiere Pro kind of maxes out its usage around 16 cores. Like, you start to lose the value of extra cores at that point?
Yeah, it's diminishing returns. It's like, how many people do you have in a kitchen cooking? And at a certain point, adding more cooks into the kitchen doesn't really help. On other things, like an assembly line, having more people on that assembly line can make it a lot more efficient. And Premiere Pro is just one of those workflows where you can get up to, like you said, somewhere around 16 cores or so, and then you don't get as much. And the fact that each one of those cooks is slower, you're better off with faster, fewer cooks. Right. And so Premiere Pro is a little bit that way. DaVinci Resolve is similar to that in most of the cases. The main difference between applications like Premiere Pro or Avid and DaVinci Resolve is a lot more GPU focused. And so Premiere Pro, mid-range GPU, probably is going to get you most of what you need. DaVinci Resolve, you can keep adding GPUs. You can do 2, 3, 4 GPUs, and man, it'll just keep using it.
And have you done testing? NVIDIA or AMD, is there a difference with Resolve?
Yeah, right now, in most of these workflows here at like NAB, NVIDIA has a performance advantage and a little bit of like driver support advantage. AMD is doing a lot of work though, and I'm really impressed with what they've been able to do, but I don't think they're quite up there. So I think NVIDIA is the way to go most of the time, and even within NVIDIA, you have their GeForce line and then their RTX line, previously Quadro. And between those two, it really just comes down to like reliability is most of the time the main thing. It's not a mission critical system like, or you've got backups, GeForce is great. It's a great way to like save a little bit of money. It's great performance still. But if it's mission critical, you spend that extra cash for those RTX Pro cards because that's worth that investment. So it doesn't, possibly, break blue screens, that kind of thing.
Right. Now, another area, memory, RAM, is very confusing to a lot of people. So if you're doing 8K editing, what kind of RAM are you looking at? And does the speed matter significantly? Because obviously the price changes a lot with the speed of the RAM.
Yeah, so actually price these days changes more on the capacity than speed. The good thing that I can say is that in these industries, the speed of the RAM doesn't often actually impact performance as much. There's a lot of, if you really want to get into the nerdy details, there's frequency and timings, but basically those don't actually impact performance all that much. They're fast enough that adding more speed doesn't really do anything because it's waiting on the processor, it's waiting on the GPU. So most of it is about getting just enough RAM. And something like 8K editing, you probably want 128 gigs, maybe even 256 gigs. But if you're, a freelancer just working off of HEVC, or you're shooting ProRes and you're only doing 4K, you can get away with quite a bit less. But it's gotten a lot less expensive, and especially on the PC side. Apple, you pay a lot to get more RAM. On the PC side, it's not nearly that much markup. I mean, it varies by company, of course, but so going from 64 gigs to 128 oftentimes is worth it, even if you don't need it right now, because who knows what you're going to be doing in 6 months, in a year, 2 years. Most people like to have a 3 to 5 year life cycle on a workstation. And so thinking ahead, especially with all these new workflows with AI and virtual production and all this other stuff, who knows what you're going to be throwing at those systems.
And would you say we're at a point now where the CPU actual acceleration in terms of speed and things has slowed down a little bit, and you could keep a system longer and maybe just change the GPU out every couple of years?
Yeah, you can. There's a lot more that goes into it than just the CPU, though. So the CPU is kind of the central thing that all of the data goes through. So if you're feeding data to the GPU because you want to do some of the new AI stuff in DaVinci Resolve, it still goes through the CPU to the GPU. And that, like, going through things, the CPU might not be faster, like a new CPU, but the whole platform can be. So even if you're completely GPU bound, like a lot of these AI things, again, very GPU centric, a newer platform, like every generation, typically you can get about 10% more performance even if it's not using the CPU at all. It's just because of how everything is interconnected, can still give you
the overall system architecture of the board
exactly.
and everything,
Yeah.
right, and the chipset. Now, the age-old question, AMD, Intel, where are we at right now? Here in 2024, who's got the upper hand?
Yeah, okay. So we actually, if you really want the nerdy details, we did an article on our own sales data of what we've been selling recently. So you can see the exact numbers if you go to our website and articles and all that. It is almost completely flipped depending on the class of processor you're using. So consumer, it's just a poor word now, but we still kind of call it consumer grade even though we use it in workstations. So that's Intel Core, AMD Ryzen. We sell predominantly Intel Core. On a pure performance level, they're very close, but Intel has QuickSync, which can give you hardware accelerated decoding of HEVC 422 10-bit is the big one. And so it's like, well, if they're the same in every other aspect, you might as well, in case some customer or you get some stock footage that happens to be that codec, you'll be able to work with it easier. On the higher end side, like high-end desktop, or like, I don't even know if they call them workstation, but we typically used to call them workstation class, so Threadripper, Threadripper Pro, Xeon W. We right now are about 90% AMD Threadripper or Threadripper Pro. And between those two, it's about a 50-50 split. So we're predominantly that way. There are still some areas where Xeon W is a better fit, but not as much for the workflows here. It's oftentimes more in like scientific computing. I hate to say AI again because I've said that word so many times, but like AI where people are doing CPU based, which isn't very often. It's more on like the research side. But so for post production, Threadripper and Threadripper Pro is really the way we go.
Okay, so let's bring it back to Puget. What does that look like if I decide I want to buy a Puget Systems machine? What's the experience like? Do I call you guys up? Do you start working with me on what my requirements are? And then what does the kind of the support contract look like?
Yeah, so the one thing that I always try to tell people is just get on the phone. Give our consultants a call, because even if you go to our website, we do have configuration pages. You can do that. That's great if you want to see pricing, because we don't hide our pricing behind any registrations or anything. You don't even have to save. And if you do save a quote, one of our consultants are going to reach out to you anyway. So oftentimes I just get on the phone, because they don't just say, okay, cool, this is the quote you saved. Great, give us your credit card. They'll actually talk and say, okay, cool, that's a great quote you saved, but what are you doing? So they want to know, like, what applications are you using? What's your workflow like? What codecs are you working with? What kind of stuff are you interested in doing in the future? And then they'll take all of that and look at the budget you had, obviously, and really tweak the system. And oftentimes, when they've gone through that whole process, it ends up being a less expensive system than what the customer thought they were going to need to buy, because we can tune it exactly for that, what that workflow is. So always like to hop on the phone. You can get so much more done in a 10-minute phone call than you can in a giant email thread. Those have their place, of course. But once that's all kind of done, I believe our typical ship time right now is around 2 weeks or so. Sometimes there's shortages. We make that very clear if there's part shortages. And then the support side of things, again, it all comes down to that. We've done that investment into our employees of understanding what these workflows are. So if you have an issue, we can talk it through, not in hardware terms, but in terms of what you're dealing with. And our systems come standard with 1 year part lifetime labor and support, and they go up to 3 year part and, again, lifetime labor and support. So if you, in 5 years, you want to upgrade the GPU, send it in, you pay for the GPU, we'll do the labor, we'll retest the system, get it all up and running and everything like that. But we typically don't offer more than a 3 year part, because after 3 years, most people don't want to just replace it with the same thing. It's like, hey, this is a good time for an upgrade. So it doesn't really usually make much sense.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Matt. Where can people go to find out more about Puget Systems? Website?
Yeah, very easy. PugetSystems.com.
There it is.
There you go.
PUGET?
Yes,
right?
yes. I guess for people who aren't familiar with the Pacific Northwest, they might not know Puget. But yeah, PUGETsystems.com.
And then you guys at NAB if people are here?
Yeah, we're in South Hall Lower. I don't recall the exact number off the top of our head, but you can find us. Oh, yeah.
All right, thank you so much.
Of course, Dad, thank you.